we're breaking down the new OREC contract forms that go into effect January 1st, 2026. These updates reflect the work done by the Contract Forms Committee members, brokers, and the team at the Commission to take your feedback and suggestions and make every form clearer, more consistent, and easier for licensees and of course the public to understand. For 2026, the committee's focus was on clarity, consistency, and modernization. We updated language, cleaned up some formatting, and made sure that the forms are aligned with recent legislative changes and rule changes. All changes are detailed in the 2026 Contract Change Guide that's available for download at the orec.ok.gov website or in the email linked below. So let's start with the form most licensees use, which is the residential sale contract. Key updates include the accessory section. This clarifies that only attached and owned solar panels and generators are automatically included in the sale. For inspections and surveys, we reworded the land or boundary or survey provision to include the mortgage inspection report and retain the checkboxes to designate as a buyer or seller expense. On title evidence, we moved it to its own paragraph for easier reference and more relevant placement. Moving on to the residential property disclosure and disclaimer form. Updates here include separation of solar panels and generators. Now they are standalone questions for added clarity. And we added options for the sewer system question, so now sellers can designate the type of sewer system, whether it's an aerobic system, it's got lateral lines, or a lagoon. We reworded the flood zone question to provide space for necessary details like what type of flood zone the property is in, maybe a 100-year or 500-year zone, a floodway, or designate if it's outside the hazard area. We also added a new question on property or fixture warranties for sellers to disclose if they are aware of any warranties covering any of the property or its fixtures or improvements. On the disclaimer form, the definition of defect is now bolded to draw attention to how a defect is actually defined. We also added initials for the seller to acknowledge that they have never occupied the property, that they have no actual knowledge of any defects, and the seller makes no disclosures concerning the condition of the property. These additions give buyers and licensees a more complete picture of a property before inspection and closing. The cooperative compensation supplement, we've added clarifying language for the scenarios where you're working with counteroffers, and that language reads, in the event of a counteroffer, sellers will simply initial the form as acknowledgement of receiving the form and not sign something that may conflict with a provision of the agreed upon counteroffer. The exclusive right to sell listing agreement, the compensation paragraph has been reformatted for clarity and ease of use. Paragraph 3A outlines the total compensation to be paid in connection with the sale, and paragraph 3B outlines how the commission may be split if there is a cooperative agreement between brokerages. This is a good time to update training on how compensation is handled, negotiated, and documented in writing. The accessories language again clarifies that only attached and owned solar panels and generators transfer with the property, mirroring the change that was made on that residential form. Two important clarifications appear in the Notice of Treatment, Repairs, and Replacements form, or the TRR form. The buyer's election of no repairs is binding without a seller's signature. So in the event a seller modifies the buyer's request, we removed the word other from all treatments, repairs, and replacements requested by buyer shall be in force unless modified below. This removes any confusion as to what repairs are being agreed to in that contract. In the conditioned on sale, not under contract, and the buyer's removal of condition notification, the language now matches that mortgage inspection report reference from the residential sale form. For our commercial licensees, both the commercial improved and commercial land contracts removed commission language from paragraph 20. Instead, compensation is now handled through the cooperative compensation supplement, which you can now select as a contract document on the top of page 1. For counteroffers, the title of both the seller's counteroffer form and the buyer's counteroffer form was updated to add residential sale, so licensees know that counteroffer form is designed to be used in connection with the residential sales contract. We also updated the note section to reflect the seller's counteroffer, and any supplements or related addenda shall be in effect unless further modified on this form. Meaning, if something was agreed upon on a previous form, that is a term of the offer unless further modified on the current counteroffer form from the buyer. The old counteroffer forms are now available again for use in other transaction types. Several other forms received targeted updates. The acknowledgement and confirmation of disclosures now includes clarifying language for counteroffers. This should be signed by both the buyer and the seller, even if a counteroffer is attached. The lead-based paint disclosures for sellers and landlords were updated to match the EPA standards to include an option if the lessee has not received records regarding lead-based paint and agent acknowledgements. The condo and townhouse forms are now combined into a single document. 2 financing supplements, the Native American Guaranteed Home Loan and the VA loan. The amendatory clause was reformatted to match other financing supplements, and we also added clarification regarding counteroffers. So these edits bring our forms in line with federal and lender requirements while streamlining paperwork for licensees. So for standard clauses and new forms, we have 2 new clauses that were added to the standard clauses form. We added special warranty deed language for when a seller agrees to sell and convey that deed type with terms and conditions outlined. And we also added the required wholesaling cancellation notice language, which came from Senate Bill 1075, ensuring that anyone wholesaling a property provides a clear notice of the buyer's right to cancel. 3 new forms were created. The wholesale notice of cancellation form was created for a homeowner to notify a wholesaler of cancellation, maybe due to failure of the wholesaler disclosing or during the homeowner's right to cancel period. The second form, OREC has now released a new form specifically for manufactured or mobile home transactions. This optional supplement makes it easier to document ownership and title transfer requirements for mobile and manufactured homes. Finally, as a result of Senate Bill 877, the deed theft advisory notice was created, which outlines the signs and risks of deed theft to buyers. OREC recommends having this document signed at the time of signing other contract documents instead of waiting till closing. Brokers should ensure that this is, again, in your transaction checklists and in your files. So how can you prepare? Educators, start integrating these updates into your contracts and forms curriculum now. Use that 2026 contract change guide as your outline for updating your material. And in your material, highlight the why behind each revision so licensees understand the intent, not just the wording, and how it can play out in various transactions. For brokers, we recommend to get with an approved OREC education provider and organize CE opportunities through the rest of the year and 2026. Make sure that your transaction coordinators replace all of the old versions of old forms by the end of the year. These contract revisions are the final piece of the 2026 update package, bringing our forms, rules, and laws into alignment to better serve Oklahomans. You can download the complete 2026 contract change guide and all of the supporting resources that I've mentioned at orac.ok.gov, or in the educator and broker update email, you'll find the links there.